Okay, so picture this. It's December, twinkling lights everywhere, the smell of gingerbread in the air, maybe a little too much eggnog. But Christmas, well, it's more than just presents and Santa, right? It's a story, and it's a really old one.
It is.
You guys wanted us to do a deep dive into Christmas, so how it evolved, like from way back when to what we do today. And that's what we're doing.
Absolutely.
We've got some excerpts from the evolution of Christmas, from pagan roots to Christian celebration, and we'll unpack all this history.
Yeah.
So before we get to Christmas trees and carols, what were people actually celebrating during the winter?
Well, way before Christianity, tons of cultures had these big festivals for the winter solstice.
Oh, yeah.
And when you think about it, the shortest day, the sun being reborn, the promise of longer days coming, it makes sense why they were popping up everywhere.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it wasn't just about, like, throwing a party, was it?
Yeah.
Our source mentions how essential the winter solstice was for ancient cultures, especially the ones tied to agriculture. It was this huge time of hope, right? Hope for a good harvest in the coming year.
Oh, yeah. I mean, these festivals were all about survival, marking the cycle of life and death in nature and finding hope when it was literally the darkest time of year. It gave people a sense of community, a way to, connect with something bigger than themselves. Take Saturnalia in Rome.
Oh, yeah, Saturnalia. I remember reading about that.
Yeah.
The source describes how the Romans, they honored Saturn. He was their god of agriculture, right?
Oh.
And they honored him with feasting, with giving gifts. But get this, they also had role reversals.
What?
The masters would serve their slaves.
Wow.
I mean, that's crazy. It's wild. What do you think that tells us about, like, the human need to, well, just let loose, right?
Well,
and maybe even turn society upside down, especially around the holidays.
Well, I think it shows just how appealing rituals and celebrations are for people. They're an outlet for tension, for people wanting change. And we still see that today, like office holiday parties, right? Time to just kind of let loose and bend the rules. But as Christianity spread, these celebrations, they started changing.
Yeah. So early Christians weren't exactly putting up Christmas trees in December, were they?
No, not really.
Our source talks about how they were actually more focused on Epiphany.
Yeah?
And Christmas, the one on December 25th, that came later, possibly because of that Roman Sol Invictus festival.
Yeah. Sol Invictus, it means unconquered sun. It was a celebration of the sun's power.
Oh, okay.
And picking December 25th for Christmas, well, it could have been a way to mix those Roman traditions and beliefs into Christianity. It's pretty interesting to see how holidays change and adapt over time.
It's like a big culture mashup. Speaking of mixing traditions, the source mentions midnight mass. They started that back in the 5th century. Can you imagine? Those early Christians in the dark, waiting for the sun to rise.
Yeah.
The powerful image.
Absolutely. And then there's Advent.
Oh, right.
It started in the 6th century. It's a time to prepare, to reflect before Christmas. So you see that mix of the fun, the community stuff from the old festivals with the, spiritual focus of those early Christians.
So we move into the Middle Ages,
Yeah.
the Renaissance, and that's when things really start to change. Christmas becomes more like, well, Christmas.
It does. Our source points out a few big changes. First, early Christmas was pretty serious.
Yeah.
Now it's more about joy, celebrating, feasting, and merriment become the main event.
I'm okay with that change. So what else changed?
Gift giving. You can trace that directly back to the old pagan traditions.
Okay.
It's a central part of Christmas now. Pretty interesting to see how it stuck around for so long.
Yeah, it's like this thread through time.
Yeah.
And what about the medieval plays? They sound like a big deal back then.
Oh, they were. Imagine biblical stories coming to life right in the town square. It was a way for people to experience the story of Christmas. Super vivid, easy to understand, kind of like an early version of our nativity scenes today.
Okay. Let's fast forward. Victorian era. This is where things get really interesting. Our source talks about Prince Albert, Queen Victoria's husband. He brings the Christmas tree to England.
Yeah.
Everyone knows Christmas trees are a huge deal now, but how did one guy manage to, influence a global tradition?
Well, it wasn't just that the tree was new. It kind of tapped into this sentimental feeling that was big in the Victorian era. The tree, with all the lights, the ornaments, it became the symbol of family, of warmth, that Christmas magic.
It's amazing how some traditions just take off, right?
Yeah.
They become such a big part of our culture. And speaking of big cultural influences, we can't forget Charles Dickens.
Oh, yeah.
A Christmas Carol.
Dickens really captured the spirit of Christmas. He was all about generosity and kindness, and it resonated with people, especially back then. His story really cemented that image of Christmas as a time for goodwill, for social responsibility.
And then in the 20th century, we have consumerism and globalization.
Yeah.
And those really changed Christmas again.
They did.
It's a complicated relationship now, right? Tradition, marketing, the holidays spreading all over the world. It's fascinating.
It is. So we started with the ancient solstice rituals, and now we're here with the modern holiday. But the question is, what does it all mean for you?
Right. When you know how Christmas evolved, does it change how you think about celebrating it now? Do you see pieces of those old festivals, that yearning for light and hope in your family's traditions?
It's something to think about when you're hanging ornaments, lighting candles this year.
Happy holidays from the Deep Dive. We'll catch you in the new year.